Welcome to the Select Star Podcast, your resource for innovative technology, developer topics, and more. Here's your host, Margot McCabe from the HarperDB team.
All right, hello everyone. Welcome back. Thanks for tuning in to the Select Star Podcast hosted by HarperDB. Today we are speaking with Randy, who is a senior software engineer and tech lead at Mailchimp. Calling in from Michigan. So thanks, Randy, for joining us today.
Hello, thanks, Margot.
Yeah, I'm glad we were able to connect. I think that I saw, I think I originally came across your profile because I saw that you're speaking at a conference coming up, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
Yeah, Render ATL.
Yep, that's the one. I have been wanting to make it out there. I know last year Render popped up on my radar and like the speaker lineup is insane. So I was going through it and just kind of looked at your profile and was like, oh, it seems like Randy would be awesome to have on our podcast. So really appreciate it.
Yeah, you should. It was a great time last year. So when I joined Mailchimp, my tech lead or my onboarding buddy actually was the founder, Justin Samuels. So
Oh, cool.
It's kind of a nice thing to be able to have that close of a connection to the conference.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, it's definitely on my radar. If I don't make it out this year, then I'm really hoping to bring myself and some colleagues for next year because we've kind of been going back and forth about our conference strategy and sponsorships and stuff, but it's one I'd love to get involved with. So keeping it on at the top of my list. So yeah, before we jump into it, would love to just hear a little bit more about sort of who you are, your background, your journey in tech.
Yeah, so I'm Randy Kinne, like you mentioned, a senior engineer and pretty recently new tech lead at Mailchimp. And yeah, I've been working in tech for, I think this is my 3.5-ish year mark, 4-year mark. And I kind of had a non-traditional path, which a lot of people at Mailchimp have had into tech, which is something that I really love about our culture. But yeah, I kind of got started out in video games. I used to play them a lot when I was younger, and I specifically Minecraft, which is really funny. And then a couple years after that, I was in high school and college, and figured out that I could write code to make a career out of, and slowly just started working in that direction. Ended up dropping out of college and joining my previous company and worked there for a few years, got promoted a couple times, and moved on to Mailchimp, and here we are.
That's a good summary. I always love hearing where people's sort of first inspiration came from in terms of getting into tech. So I think the gaming piece is probably a popular one. Are you still a big gamer today? Do you still have time for that?
Not nearly as much. I enjoy it a little bit, but I like to think I'm a lot more of a well-rounded person now with other interests outside of that. So
yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I actually had someone on the podcast last season named Bria, who's a game creator, and that was really cool to just dive a little bit more into the inner workings of like how an idea initially comes to be up for a game and all the different logistics that go into it and like the user experience and graphics. And it was really cool to learn more about that. I could see that definitely like sparking your interest.
Yeah, it was just something where I could combine like a hobby or like a passion with writing code, and then I've just kind of followed that, and it's led me to where I am.
That's awesome. And so what was your process then for learning to code? Did you do like a traditional boot camp or?
Yeah, so it was honestly a lot of YouTube tutorials, and what I would do, which I didn't know it at the time, but I would basically see what other people had written for code that did certain things in the game, and then I would just kind of reverse engineer that and like make it do my own thing. And I spent probably like a year or two doing that as a teenager, and then moving on, like I started attending college and stuff, and they were going over programming concepts, and I didn't have like a name for what the programming concepts were called, but I'd see them there at the class and think, oh wait, I've already done this. I just didn't know what it was called. So
That's pretty sweet. I mean, you got that early start, and that's definitely like gives you a leg up. I feel like especially starting in the teenage years, you're really just doing that because it's like a hobby and something you're passionate about, and not because like a class or someone is forcing you to. So that's
Mhm.
really cool. I'm sure that made the whole process a lot easier.
It did, and that's one of the reasons why I'm really like passionate about like code in high schools and in middle schools and things like that. Because getting young kids kind of exposed to these concepts and get their mind thinking about the ways that they can break problems down and stuff like that is going to be really valuable for like future generations.
Yeah, that I know that's a great point. And even if like frameworks and like coding languages and things change, I think even getting some of those fundamentals under your belt early on, like you can still kind of apply that later on, no matter
Hmm.
what you do, if it's anywhere in tech. Like I feel like code is popping up, even if you're in marketing and just have to do a little bit with websites or whatever it might be. It's definitely like something to have a good foundation that I wish I did, certainly.
And even like just the most basic level, like problem solving skills can be insanely valuable to have for
Yeah,
any career.
yeah, exactly. That makes sense. Awesome. And so I'm curious just to hear a little bit more about like current day with what you're doing now, what your day to day is like, what you're kind of focusing on as a senior engineer and tech lead. I know you said the tech lead part is new. So like, how did that change your role? Stuff like that.
Hmm. Yeah, so my team, and I guess it's not unique to my team, but at Mailchimp we have a very like flexible tech lead role, where it's encouraged to be rotated or passed on and passed off as needed. So on my team, I split tech lead rotation duties with another engineer, and I'm really thankful because he handles a lot more of the like deep down technical details of like tech leading. But it means that I get to go to like the product side meetings and like marketing and other meetings and like have a more like 30,000 degree view of the stuff that our team's going to be doing later on and like what we're doing now and what other teams are doing now. So that means that I can usually like take a problem that our team has and bring it to other teams and see if like as an organization we can come to a better solution, or the other way around. If I've seen something that another team's doing really well that our team could do, that we could do that as well.
Interesting. Yeah, I really like that format of rotating the tech lead as well, so that you can sort of share some of the challenges and responsibilities. And it sounds like one of the main differences is that now you have this visibility across a lot of different teams and are maybe doing a lot more collaborating than you would have previously been doing as a software engineer. Like now, it's cool that you kind of have your hands in different buckets.
Hmm. Yeah, it's been really helpful because in the past, and this isn't exclusive to Mailchimp or Intuit, but in the past, the tech lead role has oftentimes been like something that burns people out, because it can be really hard to be the person that has full oversight of like all of the different projects the team has going on, but also is like the main implementer of those projects. That can be a really tough thing to balance because you're effectively doing like two jobs at once. So being able to rotate that stuff off and have like a great team to be able to back you up on those things is really important.
Yeah. That's awesome. And would you say when you first started in your career, like, was this a role that you pictured yourself going into or wanted to go into, or did it kind of fall in your lap and it just seemed like the timing was right, or how did that work?
Hmm. It kind of it's kind of both. I didn't really have my sights set on it. I think that I wanted to continue growing in my career, but it wasn't anything that really came about as like deliberate planning. It was more so that I just continued building the things that our team was building and like connecting dots with other teams. And over time, that those kind of like learnings just happen both ways, and here we are.
Here we are. And so, what kind of challenges then do you face in your role? Like, if other folks are listening that want to get to a similar place in their career, either just getting started out or maybe are like shifting into software engineering later on in their career or whatever it might be, or even, folks that are just transitioning from a more independent contributor role to more of like a team oriented role, like tech lead. any sort of tips that come to you, or like challenges that you face and good ways that you found to overcome them?
So the biggest challenges that I've seen, at least in my current role right now, are when you're looking at like larger groups of people, like finding the spots where people disagree, where people have different mental models of what works and what doesn't, and what something's going to look like, and trying to get all of those people on the same page. Those are like the two hardest things, because one, it's hard to figure out like what different mental models people have, and then the other one is being able to write enough documentation or share things in a friendly enough way that's easily consumable by different audiences to be able to get everyone on the same page. So really it's just like written documentation skills or written communication skills are just really hard.
Yeah, I know, it's funny. Like, I mean, we've definitely found with our product that one of the main suggestions that we've gotten over the years is just around docs. And I think that's super common for any sort of developer oriented type of product, because everyone learns and communicates differently. So like you could totally revamp your docs and change them and think that they're clearer and easier to understand, but then someone might be like, well, I liked it better than actually the way it was before. So it's hard to like please everyone. Have you found, even with communicating like internally on teams, have you found that different people have different styles and that you try to accommodate it all? Or like, is that sort of a group effort of deciding the way that docs will be created?
Very. So it's very common to have different people having different like communication styles. And it's very different whether someone is like fully remote or not fully remote, for example, in terms of their communication style, of whether they'd like to have a meeting for something or whether it's better as an async like chat. And
Right.
so being able to come up with something that is like flexible for everyone is important. So like something that we do is we try to like post meeting summaries, or at least like my team tries to do, is post meeting summaries whenever we have a meeting. That way we're like, every time we're having a meeting or something, we're trying to put it into a like easily digestible format.
Yeah, I think that's a good like having some sort of log or tracking so that you just have those notes and bullet points to go back and look on, and like not try to remember everything. And even sending notes, I think, to the team after a call, sending
Mhm.
a summary around can be helpful too, because then people can go in and be like, well, actually, I want to provide more detail here, or maybe change that idea here. And it's like you can never be too organized when it comes to that stuff.
Exactly. It's one of those things that when you frame notes that way, you also get to see like where people's mental models differ on how something works or what something looks like.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I think that's a really good point. I could see that being a big challenge. I'm sure that a lot of people are in a similar boat and can definitely resonate with that. So do you, um, stepping away from just that specific challenge, do you have any other like tips, or if people are wanting to get started out in coding and didn't start at an early age, or just like kind of moments in your career thus far that you were like, oh, I kind of wish someone told me this sooner, or anything like that?
hmm The best thing that helped me was definitely just combining passions with code. When I was trying to learn things, it made it a lot easier because I could take like an existing passion, and I wasn't just writing code for writing code. I was building something that I really enjoyed. Like, for example, when I was in college, I'm a really big hockey fan here living in Michigan. And I think I wrote like some kind of bot to post things to Reddit about the Red Wings prospects, and just being able to combine like a passion with coding made it a lot easier to actually build something and like follow through with it. And so that's something that I did, that I have a lot of friends trying to get into tech as well, which I love the industry. So I don't blame them. And I give them the same advice of like, build something you're passionate about, or find something you're passionate about and build something that like fits that.
Yeah, I think, and that's a great reminder and good way to get started, of like find either something you're excited about, like sports, or find
Mhm.
some sort of problem or issue that's like affected you personally or affected people, and maybe come up with a solution or like a way to solve that with tech. or with an app or with some sort of integration. And I feel like, yeah, if you really care about it, then you'll follow through with it. And then whether or not you end up following that similar path in your actual like 9 to 5 career, then I don't think it needs to be like as much of a stress, because you can still kind of have those side projects and like have those passion projects, but still, have a reliable paycheck with like an awesome company at the same time.
Right. That's kind of the route that I went.
That's awesome. Yeah, I was just going to ask then if you currently do have any side projects, or if you have in the past, or if you're like contributing to any open source stuff, or kind of just outside of that day to day.
I don't. I think it's important, but at the same time, with my role changing in the past few months, becoming a tech lead and stuff, I try to put all of my energy available into solving like the hard problems that I see at work, where it's usually like whole groups of people having like different understandings of things and trying to get everyone on the same page and trying to like see our team's roadmap and get ahead of the things that might be a problem like 2 to 3 months down the line.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I think like there's this whole idea around like the 10x developer, and there's a lot of, really awesome sort of influencers in the developer and tech community on Twitter and all these other spaces. And I see them talking about all the different things they're working on, and they also have their regular day job, and like not judging that, but I'm just always like, how do you have like I feel like it makes me feel like I'm slacking for not having these things that I'm working on in after hours, or like, the people that are founders and are creating something from the ground up, and they're doing it when they get home in the evenings. And that's like so awesome, but also a good reminder that that is like not a requirement to be successful in your career. And there's totally work-life balance as well.
Absolutely. I think if I was doing that, I would be burned out really quickly.
Yeah.
I, for what it's worth, I don't have any type of following on Twitter. I do follow other people, and that was something that I did before I got into tech, was like follow what other people are saying and like read the blog posts that they post. And I still do that, but I don't post my own things or build my own things outside of work. So yeah, you're right. I do see that a lot about, the 10x developer, like, oh, if you're not building in public or like building side projects, like, are you developing? But there's a lot of engineers that are, work alongside me and are great, that don't have massive followings or other things that they've done.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think it is a really good reminder, because you see people asking questions about like, what if I want to try to find a community or try to build my career or like network, but I'm not building in public, and I'm not an influencer. I don't want to be on social media. Like there's still, I would still probably say like a bigger percentage of developers that are still sort of doing that and wanting to operate in that way. And like, I think that there is still a time and a place, and like, you can find a mentor within your own team or at your company, or like you can join Discord channels, or as you said, you can like read people's blogs and not have to comment and get super public about it. And I think it's fine. Like I definitely agree with the people that say like, look, I got a job because I posted and did all this, but there's still that whole other side to it, and it's totally fine. Like there doesn't need to be the pressure around it.
Like I agree, it's completely fine, and like a lot of people get opportunities that way. It's a great way to, increase your brand and like have access to opportunities that you might not have had otherwise. But you don't need to go that route, because it can be really hard, like especially if you already have a full-time job, to have like a social media presence on top of it, because that is also like a full-time job.
Right. Yeah, I know. I have my days, like I definitely try to, because I kind of have two different roles that I'm focused on right now. One is on the partnership side of things, and then one is the DevRel, like community engagement, influencer marketing, all of that, which I love. But I have my days where I have to remind myself like, oh, I should probably pop on Twitter or pop on social media and like see what people are talking about, and make sure to get engaged with, the people I am constantly in contact with. And it can be a time sucker, because then sometimes I'm like, okay, it's been an hour and like, what am I doing? So there's a time and a place for it too. And I think some people like take a couple of years away and then maybe have time in their career where they want to do more of that relationship building and more of that community engagement. And like, I think it's just most important to like look at your own goals, your own time management, and see what's working for you and what's not, and not feel like you have to do what you see that everyone else is doing.
Mhm. Yeah, it can be really difficult to not like try to follow the trend.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a great reminder. So, I was gonna pivot back to Mailchimp also. Is there like anything on the more just high level side? I haven't really ever spoken with anyone that works at Mailchimp. Is there like anything that's happening that's really exciting that you guys are like innovating or where you guys plan to be in 5 or 10 years? Obviously, I know like the space that you guys operate in, but is there like anything exciting we should be on the lookout for?
Yeah, so I think all of the Chat GPT stuff is really interesting. Chat GPT is probably really good at writing emails for customers. And so we're exploring some of that stuff, but on the whole with Intuit, we are starting to use more Intuit technologies and things like that, which Intuit operates on a much larger scale than even Mailchimp, and Mailchimp's on quite a big scale as it is. So there's a lot of like interesting projects that are coming down the pipeline that uh, we'll see like new capabilities that Mailchimp has never seen before. So I'm excited.
Yeah, no, that's cool. That's interesting what you say about ChatGPT because we've even been talking about like I'm sure people are already doing this every single day. Like you can use it to just write a blog for you. And then I don't know if at some point like Google's gonna have filters for that where it's still, where it will like flag it and say, but I don't, it's just really interesting. There's like so many sides to it. And it's like if you can use this tool that makes your life easier, if you can use this tool to write a really great email for you, like write a sales campaign, then why wouldn't you? Because I've seen all these people like humans aren't even going to be writing their own stuff anymore, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, so what? I mean, you can use it too.
Yeah, I think the real advantage is like combining it with humans.
Right.
That's where we're really gonna see things start to be a lot easier in a lot of ways. Just for customers to be able to send nice emails without having a whole marketing department writing emails. Things.
Right. Yeah, it's going to be a time saver. And it's especially those people that don't have like a specific training in engaging with customers or whatever it might be. If they want to you can get some ideas from ChatGPT and then tweak it yourself or like do your own research separately. It doesn't have to be the end all be all, but it certainly can be a time saver. And I feel like make people more comfortable with maybe things they weren't comfortable with before. So yeah, I like that idea of like it's the combination of humans using these tools, not these tools like running everything, where it really becomes a awesome. So and outside of that, like I know you said you're not working on any side projects or anything right now, but are there like any other tools or technology that you're excited about or that you kind of have on your list or like frameworks or languages or just anything that you are wanting to get into over the next year?
Um, not necessarily. I do wish I had a little bit more time for that side of things, but we're just working at my job. I think it's important to be present, which one of the things that I could do before I was a tech lead was not necessarily be present all the time on the team or, kind of work on my own thing, but working in the tech lead role where you're in meetings for probably like a quarter to half the day at minimum. You really have to be like present and carry the context a lot more. So I haven't had the time to do that, but with our internal tooling and technologies, and like I said, the projects we have going on, that I've been happy enough to grow my career through that.
Yeah. Well, that's great. It seems like you're in a really good place and the fact that you're wanting to like put so much time and effort and focus into it is I think a really good sign. So it's again, I think it's this whole like you got started early, kind of knew what you wanted to get into, which is always good to hear. And like once you start in tech, one of my favorite things is how sort of fluid and overlapping different things can be. And I think like you hear some people talk about how they went so far down one path and they're afraid to shift. Like, for example, maybe they started in DevOps and they want to switch to like web development or something totally different. But that's been one of my favorite things about everyone I chat with is like, once you build all that support and have that experience, it's pretty easy to make those shifts and just kind of like follow your path and your passions with whatever makes sense.
It is. And so when I first joined my previous company, I was in kind of like a solutions engineering role, which in solutions engineering, there's very much this idea of like the T-shaped engineer, where you have a really broad like set of skills that are not very deep, and then you have one area that you're like really deep in. And I think there's a lot of value to that, of having very general and not very deep experience with a lot of different things, and having something that you specialize in or want to focus on, put more effort into. That's really helpful for just being adaptable as like an engineer or even just a person.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's I think having that broad experience, especially, is like a great way to start. It's cool that you kind of started with that and then maybe got more specific with what you're doing now. Because when you have that broad understanding and experience, you can really try different things and like understand what you want to get more into. And again, I think it just goes back to that like 10x developer discussion, because, or the myth of the 10x developer, because it's like you can either be broad and know a little bit about a lot of things, or like get really specific and be an expert on a few things, but don't try to do it all, because I feel like that's just a dead end road. Or maybe someone that's been more like in their career for 60 years or something. But it's cool that you kind of have that exposure first and then could transition into what you're doing now.
Yeah, and honestly, I would just say that's advice for like everybody, like in hobbies and things like that, is just trying a bunch of different stuff, and some things you're going to be better at, some things you're going to be worse at. And building up like a community of people around you, or like being around people that you enjoy being around, can be a big part of that experience too.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's awesome. And so one of the last things I was going to ask here is, since you are an example of someone that's like not super active on social media, do you have any suggestions for like places? I don't know if you have like specific blogging websites or Discord chat channels or anything like that, but do you have any places that you go when you just want to like ask a quick question or see what other people are talking about, or like try to connect with someone, or are you still just not really getting super involved in any of that at the moment?
So I try to make like most of my connections internally at my company,
Okay,
but
that
I
makes
do
sense.
read a lot of blog posts from people that I really admire. Um, Wish I could remember some off the top of my head, but
That's okay.
yeah, let's see. I remember when I was getting into tech, I would read all of these blog posts and see talks from people, and really respect what they were saying, and they made a lot of sense. And even if I was like a junior engineer at the time, or before I had even gotten into tech, I was in college, I would read these blog posts about like being a staff engineer, for example. And even though that didn't apply necessarily to me in my circumstance, it like still taught me something that I maybe use now. So I think just like overall, just reading code and reading blog posts is a lot like underrated, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it definitely does. And I think it's good to keep sort of like a list on hand, because there's obviously endless amounts of information and resources out there. And it's good to like, once you find someone whose work or whose article that really resonated, or that you just liked their communication style, or like found a tip that stuck with you, I think it's good to just keep a short list somewhere of like, here's 4 or 5 writers that maybe every few months or so I'll check in to see if they have new stuff. Because there's no reason to try to boil the ocean. Like if you've already found a couple folks that you like, then like try to just keep, subscribe to like 1 or 2 of those, and don't go crazy with it. So I think that's a good tip as well. Awesome. Well, I know we're coming up here on time. I really appreciate you taking the time to chat, Randy. And as mentioned at the beginning, for anyone listening, definitely encourage you to check him out at Render ATL. If you're going, I forgot to ask what you're talking about. I don't know if you're allowed to say yet, but
I have an idea. I haven't finalized it yet. But probably something about how I've dropped out of college and how that leads to like further leadership skills and stuff like that. Because I think that a lot of the people at Mailchimp that have started and come from other careers and from non-traditional backgrounds, like I know engineers that were some of my favorite leaders at Mailchimp were like bartenders before, or they have a degree in like rocket engineering, which even though like Mailchimp started as rocket science group, I don't think it really helps them write code for emails. So
Yeah.
it's these different backgrounds that, if you started in a different background and you weren't happy with it or something like that, at some point you recognized, or you like internally felt this idea of failure, and instead reframed that towards like, okay, here's this other career, maybe I could go into that, and then like worked into that. And it's not just like a couple engineers that have that at Mailchimp. It's like a very wide and deep group of people that came from like boot camps and stuff like that,
Yeah.
that I really recognize with. And yeah, I think my talk might be something about that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that sounds super interesting and something that a lot of people will be able to relate to. I like in coding, especially, it's just becoming one of those career paths that's moving away from like the traditional 4-year university degree. And so many, I mean, way more people more often than not that I talk to are like self-taught or just did a couple-week boot camp or learned over the course of a couple of years. And like, I think it's good that we can maybe move away from this like paradigm of you have to have the traditional degree from the traditional university, and it like these are hard skills that people can kind of learn on their own time. So
Yeah,
I think that sounds like an interesting topic. I'm sure it'll resonate with a lot of people, and I will keep in touch and let you know if I end up being able to make it out there this year. But if not, as I said, definitely next year, maybe we can cross paths.
that sounds. The other thing about the talk is that like there's definitely groups of underrepresented minorities that may get less opportunities for like things that they aren't necessarily qualified for. But I think there's like a lot of jobs and stuff like that that may be overlooking some people. So I'll be talking about that too.
Okay. Well, I love that. Yeah, I mean, there's a good intersection of those different topics. Obviously, that's a super, super important one. So, and that's one of the big focuses of Render ATL, I know. So, that's great. Well, congrats again on the talk that you have coming up, and thank you, Randy, for taking the time to chat with us. And I look forward to keeping in touch.
Thank you so much, Margot.
All right, have a good one.
Yes, you too.
Thanks for listening to Select Star, your resource for innovative technology and developer topics. You can find our episodes in all the usual places: Spotify, Apple, Google, RSS, and YouTube. Don't forget to rate, comment, subscribe, and share. You can learn more about HarperDB at harperdb.io.